Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for taking some time to be here tonight, inshallah, with us. I hope that you're able to benefit from this workshop that we're doing tonight and take it with you to share with those who are not here. Perhaps you have some family, friends who might benefit from this information as well, or just some family in general who might be able to benefit. So my name is Omar and I'm a high school guidance counselor. And this is the perspective that I'm bringing with me here. I'm also the one who facilitates the Dean for Teens program here at nighttime, so that on Friday nights. So I'm also bringing that perspective with me as well, so that we can be aware of where I'm coming from, because the thoughts that I'm sharing with us here tonight really are from the perspective of a teacher working with young people. And I've been a teacher now for, this is my 19th year of teaching, and I've been a guidance counselor now for 8 years, which means that I'm bringing with me years of experience, and experience from different parts of the GTA, from Toronto, Mississauga, and Brampton as well, and also a short time in the Middle East. If you need more worksheets or clipboards, just let me know, or pens. Give me 1 second. Okay, so let's begin, inshallah. So this topic, mentally unwell, how to help your child, is really my advice to myself first and foremost, because I've got children at home as well. And the role of a teacher in a school setting, according to the Ontario Education Act, is called in loco parentis, which means that I'm the local parent at school for all those students who are there. So if you have students who are attending school, in a public setting or a private setting for that matter, you should know that when we're working with teachers in a school setting, we don't look at them as strangers, but in fact we look at them as parenting partners. And that's what the law tells teachers to do and invites parents to think about as well. So let's begin. It is very important for us to take a look at the concept of mental health and well-being, first and foremost from ourselves. Our children are a reflection of ourselves. They are a reflection of what happens in the home. They are a reflection of You can give her a pen and paper, it's not a problem. So it's you want a pen? Okay. Mel is supposed to make her patient, inshallah. Okay, so before we start looking at our children, we must first look at ourselves in our homes. If what's happening to our children is a reflection of what's happening in the home, then that's where the root cause is of mental unwellness and mental health. It's also the place where the cure can be found as well. We might bring elements from outside of the home into the home to, inshallah, provide for our children as best as we can. So let's begin. The first question on our worksheet is, who are we? Human beings, no matter what age we are, no matter where in the world we come from, we all wear different layers of identity. So I'm going to invite you to ask yourself the question, if you are the son or the daughter of somebody, which we all are, what does that mean about who we believe we are? You take some time out to write it down, inshallah. So we're giving you some time to think for yourself. So on your worksheet, you have a chart there. It's called the Minds On Activity. So I'm going to invite you to think about some of your prior learning and ask yourself the question, who are you as a son or a daughter? Are you obedient? Are you disobedient? Are you respectful? If your parents are alive, I'm assuming your parents are not alive. Were you respectful or disrespectful? Were you obedient? Do you show them kind words? And keeping in mind that what goes around comes around. If I was rotten to my parents, then I will see that in my lifetime as well with my own children. If everybody does not have a worksheet, they're here. If you want to grab a worksheet and a pen. And if that might be a little bit difficult or maybe too far away from where you are right now in your life, then who are you as a husband or as a wife? Are you a caring husband or caring wife? Are you a nagging wife or a nagging husband? Usually the men smile when I say that. These men are very serious. Maybe your wives were there, I don't know. They don't want to laugh too loud. Are you respectful to each other? And then as a mother or a father, who are you? So if you're a mother or you are a father, what kind of a mother or father are you? Are you the kind that creates an inviting home? An atmosphere where kids feel comfortable and safe to talk about everything that they want to talk about, no matter what it possibly could be? Even topics that we might find embarrassing? What kind of a mother or father, what kind of mother or father are we? As a father, how do I treat my wife in front of my kids? As a mother, how do I treat my husband in front of my kids? What am I teaching them about the role of mother and father? Through my own actions or inactions, through my words, and through the beliefs that I share. As an employee, what kind of employee am I? Who am I as an employee? Am I the type of employee who is on time all the time? Or am I late to work every day? Am I the type of employee who is earning his money or stealing hours away napping? I say that in all honesty because when I first started being a guidance counselor, one of the guidance counselors used to disappear at 12 o'clock every afternoon, although he had counseling time, and I would find him often sleeping in the staff room for the whole afternoon. He retired shortly after. He was well over his 60s, into late 60s. As a student, what kind of a student am I, or was I? And what kind of stories do I share with my kids? Do I share stories of how I cheated? How I had a cheat sheet hidden under my shoe? Was I the kind of student where I share stories with my kids that I was, the smart cookie in the teacher's pet, so to speak? What kind of a student was I? And what kind of stories am I sharing with my kids? My father used to tell me about his friend named Majid. My father had a hard time remembering logarithms. It was before calculators, obviously. But his friend Majid memorized them all, so he used to always look at Majid's sheet during geometry class and calculus and so on. As a friend, who am I as a friend? So if my kids were to describe me as a friend, what kind of a friend would they think I am? Am I a friend who tells the truth and reminds his own friends about the good things to do in life and how to uphold the values of Islam? Or am I the kind of friend who tells vulgar jokes and laughs about it? Am I the kind of friend who gives good advice to my friends, or do I give bad advice to my friends? What kind of a friend am I? And the last, but probably the most important, is what kind of a Muslim am I? Who am I as a Muslim? Am I a practitioner of Islam? If so, what am I doing with my Islam? Am I upholding the 5 pillars? Do I pray 5 times a day? Do I give zakat? Do I fast all the days of Ramadan? When it comes to my character, will someone look at my character and say, yes, he's following the character of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Or is he following the character of somebody else? What kind of a Muslim character am I portraying? Right. If I was in the community or at the masjid or at the mall or at work or at home with my friends, what characteristics am I portraying that fall within the realm of Islam or don't? So why are these layers of identity so important for us as parents to first think about? It's because we have children looking up to us. And our children are a reflection of who we are. So depending on where I am on the scale of good and evil with regards to these layers of identity, I'm impacting my kids in exactly that same way. And that's something we often forget as parents. I'm sure you've heard the old adage, monkey see, monkey do. Our kids are exactly that. They absorb everything in their environment. Language, characteristics, treatment of other people. Right? Especially even treatment of spouses, because they'll learn that that's how you're supposed to treat your spouse. If I've ever spoken to myself to people who have abusive relationships with their children, they'll describe their own childhood as being abusive as well. Right? So, in order for us to break the cycle of abuse or mental unwellness, we need to start taking a look at what we're doing in our homes and what we are portraying on a regular basis. Right? Yes.
So, I want before we go further to discuss the statement that children are a reflection of the parents. From where does it come? Is it the research? Is it the...
Yeah. Thank you. The question is... Okay. It's a good question. So the question is that, okay, I made the statement that children are a reflection of their parents. And where does the statement come from? Is there any sort of research done on this? Yes, there is. So I'm actually quoting that from second year child development psychology course from University of Toronto. That's where I got this from. Okay? Yes. So this is based on many, like years and years of research that other child psychologists have actually done and then presented their facts and findings. Is it 100%? Nothing's ever 100%. But you'll find yourself, if you look at your own children, right? If any of us look at our own children and their character, their language that they use, where they're learning that from. They're learning that from inside the home. If we're learning, and do they learn language outside the home? They do. They learn swear words outside the home. But if their parents are not using those swear words, then they're likely not to use those swear words. If the parents are using those swear words, they're likely to use those swear words. The parent becomes the filter of what is right and what is wrong based on what they see in society, right? So, depend on what characteristics I'm showing. So if I'm the person who picks up let's say those telemarketing calls come in, right? If I pick up the phone and I start telling the person off that why are you calling here and stop calling me, and my kid sees that, when they pick up the phone, what are they going to do? They're going to do monkey see, monkey do. Right? It's the same lesson we learn as teachers as well. Because in teachers' college, we do a course in child psychology. And we learn that there are 16 psychological milestones that we need to be cognizant of as teachers. So the way I approach a grade 9 classroom as a teacher is very different than a grade 12 classroom. And that's because the most critical age is grade 6, 7, 8, and 9 for the psychological development of a child. Each of those 4 years, which is 11, 12, 13, and 14, each year represents a different psychological milestone. The next one is 16, then 19, then 21, then 25, then 30, then 40, and then 50, and then 65. Right? Which is why they say you can't teach an old dog new tricks. You've heard that before. After the age of 30, 65, you're over the hill, so to speak. But before that, we have multiple psychological milestones. So being cognizant, I'm going way off topic, I'm sorry, but to answer your question fully, we have to be cognizant of the fact that our kids are absorbing 100% when they're young, maybe 75% when they're in that middle age, and about 50% or less as they continue to move on. Once they become mukallaf, once they enter the age of 12, 13, 14, they then begin to decipher for themselves what is right and what is wrong. Parent no longer becomes the filter. Society or Islam becomes the filter. So if a child has grown up with Islam being the filter for their parents when they were young, they will choose Islam as their filter when they become a teenager and forward. If the parents have not been the filter and they've been using society as a filter when they're young, and the parents have been doing exactly the same thing, then they choose that as a filter as they get older and go into their teenage years, which is what affects our kids, right? I'm doing a small lesson in psychology to answer the brother's question. It's a very important question, though. Jazakallah khair for asking it. So what I'm saying is that if we build a foundation where we as parents think about these elements of identity, right, and we teach our kids through our actions, through our words, and through our discussions on a regular basis, and we keep in mind that our kids are observing us at all times, then we demonstrate for them the best of characteristics and link it back to Islam. So I'll bring home a problem from work and I'll say, this is what's happening in my workplace. Teacher A is doing this, teacher B is doing this, the principal says this, I disagree. I'll ask my kids, should I go back and yell at the principal? Should I go back and scream? And they'll say no, and I'll say why? Because Allah doesn't like it. That's the Islamic filter. If I say to them, if I don't even ask them, I say, you know what, I'm going to go back tomorrow, I'm going to scream. I'm going to yell. Right? I'll give you my own example when I was growing up. My father had a boss named Marvin. Marvin was a horrible man. And I learned all about Marvin because my father would come home and tell me all the bad things that Marvin did. But my father never talked back to Marvin because he was trying to teach me customer service, how to be a good employee. He said, my risk is from Allah. I'm not accountable to the people, I'm accountable to Allah. So I'm not going to yell and scream back at Marvin even though he's a horrible boss, because on the Day of Judgment, what will I say to Allah? Islamic filter. Does that make sense? On the other hand, let's say for example, as a husband or a wife, I don't use Islam as my filter. I use society as my filter. And I only love my wife on Valentine's Day. And the rest of the 364 days, I disregard her. I show her no respect. I don't buy her gifts. I don't buy her her clothing. I forget to do the groceries. I don't show her the respect that is required of me to show her within the Islamic filter. I use society as a filter, where in society, men are dominant, and they don't care about their women, generally speaking. Which is why we have so much spousal abuse going on. Women are always being emotionally abused, socially abused in society, because men use society as a filter, not faith. Does that make sense? So then my kids are going to see that in their lives, and they'll grow up, the females will grow up with the expectation that they're going to be abused, and they have no rights in the society. Which is why I find very few females getting involved in things like engineering and technology and computers or math, because they're made to feel less than. Whereas the man is given all of these opportunities, and this male privilege continues to develop within society. And our kids grow up, our boys will grow up thinking, I can do whatever I want. Right? Does that make sense? Does that answer the question somewhat? So we can go further into it, inshallah. Maybe I can even share with you some psychological articles so you can see what I'm talking about. But we'll move on and we'll come back to it at the end, inshallah.
Modern psychology is not Islam.
I understand that. I understand. And inshallah we will. Inshallah we will. Inshallah we will. I need to move on, but we'll come back, inshallah. We see each other every week. We'll talk about it, inshallah. So, the central theme behind this is this ayah in Surah Tawbah, verse 119. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ittaqullaha wa kunu ma'as sadiqin. So, the best thing that we can do for our children is be their friends. Right? From the time that they're young to the time that they're old. The Prophet ﷺ taught us that for the first 7 years, nurture your child. For the next 7 years, teach your child. For the following 7 years, when they become a teenager, befriend your child. And this ayah is something that resonates not just when they're 14 and up, but really even when they're young as well. All you who believe, have taqwa of Allah and surround yourselves with those who are as-sadiqeen. Which means that we have to reflect who our friends are. If my friends are the kind of friends who drink alcohol when we visit each other, or they smoke, or they do drugs, or they speak bad jokes. Right? So I'm Punjabi, that's my background, and if you know anything about Punjabi families, it's just vulgar talk. That's all they talk about. Anybody here Punjabi? Right? It's just swearing after swearing, and the most worst jokes you can possibly imagine. And I grew up listening to these jokes, right? This is what became my normal state of being. And so this is something that I wish that my own parents had thought about as well, is that who are our friends? And how does that impact our kids? Right? What is the impact it has on our children to see uncles and aunts who they're supposed to be respecting drinking alcohol in the home, or smoking in the home, right? Or saying all sorts of bad and vulgar kind of talk and swear words in the home. That has an impact. So when I choose my friends, who I keep as my company, my kids will learn exactly the same way. My kids will learn that these are the kind of friends I should have as well. Okay? So what we have to remember at all times is this concept of parent as first educator. That no matter what we are doing, whatever we are portraying in the home, we are educating our kids. Don't think we're doing it because it's not a conscious effort. But subconsciously, we are enacting what we believe. We're choosing the friends that we believe based on our backgrounds. And our kids are seeing that and learning exactly the same thing. The apple does not fall far from the tree. Right? The apple does not fall far from the tree. It will land right next to the tree. Our children are our apples. So if whatever we're growing on our trees, that is what they're going to absorb. Okay. So that's us. That's us as individuals. Now let's talk about our kids and what we can do to help them. Okay? I should ask this question first. What are the 3 parts about believing in Allah? There are 3 parts about believing in Allah, and if we don't know these 3 parts, we don't truly believe in Allah. Everybody's shocked now. Everybody's wondering, do I really believe in Allah, or these 3 things? The first is love. We must love Allah. Without loving Allah, we don't really truly believe in Him. The second is fear. And this is khawf, not taqwa. Khawf. Right? And the third is hope. We must hope in Allah. Okay? So these are the 3 elements that we need to make sure that we inculcate in our home environments, so we can talk to these 3 elements in our kids' lives on a regular basis, and then we can remind ourselves of as well. But what does hope stand for? Hold on, pain ends. It's extremely important that we tackle mental health and well-being with our kids head on. That we actually have conversations with them about the ups and downs of life. And so this concept of hope, really, what I have found in my experience as a counselor, working with teenagers, is that this is the element of life that most of them are missing. Most of them are not, doesn't matter. Male, female, doesn't matter. And when I speak with those parents, I find that the parents have the same problem, is that they don't have the same hope within themselves. It's a constant state of worry and anxiety and stress. And when I speak to kids who are experiencing anxiety and stress or they're mentally unwell, it's always the same comment, no matter which the kid is: sir, there's no way out. I can't do it. It's not going to happen. The same refrain over and over again because of this lack of hope. So this is going to be the fundamental ingredient that we need to make sure that we inculcate within our kids, and that we can even take this, make a graphic like this and hang it in our homes and have this as a general mantra that we have in our homes. I'll give you an example. In my own home, what I've done, the kitchen table where everybody sits, on the wall, we put 3 clipboards, and on the clipboards we have our kids and myself, we change up different things. So every week we put up a new dua, we put up a new ayah from the Quran that we talk about at the dinner table for a whole week, and then we have some sort of a quotation or a saying of some sort. And we've had this on the wall as well. So just an idea as parents, like how to actually bring these how to develop a conversation, how to bring these concepts into conversation. Considering having something on your kitchen wall or wherever the family gathers, maybe if you have a small musalla in your home where everybody prays together, you can hang it up over there. Something where we can physically see a reminder to have these conversations with our families. Now, how do we develop hope in our kids around this concept of mental wellness? First and foremost, is to educate ourselves. Okay, we need to be aware of what does mental unwellness look like, what does stress and anxiety look like, sound like, and feel like. So I want to share with us a small video. I had to plug in my speaker. And the video really is about, it's actually from Australia. And Australia has been doing a huge campaign over the last, since 2015, so almost 3 years now. Just about 3 years now, where they're trying to teach the community about mental unwellness, because they're facing a huge issue of depression within their communities. So this is a federal project all the way across Australia. So give me 1 second, I'm going to put up the speaker.
Where is the boss? I'm late. My mom's gonna kill me. It's really dark. I always feel like someone's watching me. I'm gonna fail my driving test. I'm dropping the pass now. I'm never gonna get this essay done by Monday. Am I going to get enough points in leaving? Why don't guys like me? They're just hanging out with me out of pity. I just want to talk to someone. I should be studying, but I can't. I'm going to fail the leaving cert. Will's going to break up with me. Why can't they leave me alone? I can't face school tomorrow. My mum doesn't understand me. Are they separating for real this time? Should I live with my mom or my dad? Is that going to get better? What am I going to do with my life? I need a job. They're going to kill me for failing that exam. I spend way too much time on Facebook. What do I do in college? Do I have any real friends? Why am I such a freak? Why is everyone mocking me? I look horrible. Will anyone go to my dentist? Why do I get drunk and I'm such a fool of myself? Everyone judges me. What's everyone going to think about me tomorrow? What's my mum going to say? I'm afraid to talk to my friends. My parents won't listen. There's no one to turn to. I'm afraid.
Okay, so just looking at that clip, this is all happening inside of her mind. And this is a really good manifestation of what people, human beings in general, but specifically teenagers in this example, go through in their minds, where thoughts conflict with each other and thoughts are constantly rolling. And there's no slowing down the mind. Right? Has anybody themselves, I'm not sure if you'd like to, but if you're willing to, you can answer that. Have you ever experienced something like this in your own life? Perhaps as a young person, perhaps as a teenager. I can admit fully that I have, both as a teenager and as an adult as well. This is something that does happen, especially when you're really busy with life and we have a trouble slowing things down in our mind. The thoughts start to continue. As a young person who might be facing 4 exams on the same day, the stress and anxiety leading up to that can create this kind of anxiety in the mind as well. When these type of things happen, we will see certain manifestations in our kids as well. We'll see them constantly staring off into space. We'll find that they're constantly sleeping. We'll find that they're avoiding life in general. We'll talk a bit more about what that looks like shortly. But some of the questions that we can ask our kids when we might feel that they're under a stressful time, and we might know what those stressful times are. For our kids, really, it's about school. That is their whole life. So they might be feeling stressed at work, at school because of exams. They might be feeling stressed at school because of friends. They might be feeling stressed because of social media and what people are talking about on social media all day long. Right? Something to keep in mind for our kids is that when we were growing up, we dealt with everything on the playground or at school. And that was the end of the day at school. We go home and we have our own regular life. But because of social media, everything that's happening at school follows the child home because of social media. And it follows them all night long until the very next day. There's never a break from whatever's happening on social media. Right? So those conversations, that constant threat, sometimes not even a threat, sometimes not an issue of anxiety around being bullied or something. Sometimes the issue is that they got to keep up with what's being talked about online, because if they go to sleep for 2 seconds, they actually might miss something. Right? And this is another anxiety that happens with kids too, that they have to always be in the know, especially if they've got multiple people on their Snapchat or WhatsApp account or whatever it is that they're using. So we can approach our kids and approaching them that you seem a bit down these days. Can we talk? Just that open invitation that, can we talk? Is there some way I can support you? I've noticed you being a bit off these days. You're very short-tempered. Is there something that we can talk about where I can help you make you feel better? It might be something that, can I make you a hot chocolate? Can I make you your favorite dish just to kind of get you to calm down and have a seat with me? Can I go and shoot some hoops with you at the basketball? Just to kind of air out some of your grievances, and I can just be there as an ear to listen. Right? This becomes part of the conversation that we can have with our kids, to open up the doors of conversation by initiating it ourselves, because kids won't talk. Right? And the wives know this very well, because the wives know the husbands don't ever talk. They don't share their feelings. So wives are always talking to the husband saying, tell me what's going on. In the same way, we can approach our kids and ask them the same question. What's going on? What's on your mind? Right? Another thing I want us to be educated on is this. So this is becoming very prevalent. I myself never experienced something like this in 18, 20 years ago. But in the last maybe 5 to 6 years, this is happening in schools like maybe 4 or 5 times a week with different kids. Some kids experience it more than others. For some it's very severe, and for some it's not as severe. But panic attacks are becoming very regular in society. And not just amongst teenagers, but amongst adults as well. So if you ever have a chance to speak to your family doctor, if you happen to know a paramedic and you ask them, what's the number one call you get after domestic abuse? It's panic attacks. Right? It's taking up a lot of time in the hospitals, taking up a lot of time from our paramedics, right? That people are having panic attacks on a regular basis, and people don't know what's explaining it or what's causing it. So I want to just take a moment to explain to us what is a panic attack and what causes it. Because I believe that knowledge is power, and if a person knows what's happening to them, they have a chance to kind of calm down. They can help them in that moment to understand that this is what's happening to me and it will pass. I'm not having a heart attack. I'm not having a stroke. I'm not going to die. And that's what happens when people have panic attacks, especially kids, because they have no idea, no experience what's happening to them at that time, that all this fear starts to really develop inside of themselves. And what does a panic attack look like? Sweatiness, dizziness, fainting, right? Heart palpitations, heart's moving really, really fast, high blood pressure. Sometimes their body starts to shake, and there's uncontrollable shaking in their body. They can't control the shaking in their body. It's involuntary movement. Sometimes they have a massive bowel release. Sometimes they're throwing up. Sometimes they have dry mouth. They're stuttering. They can't breathe. Right? All of these resemble panic attacks. So I want to explain to us what's happening in the brain and in the body. So this reaction is very normal to a threat. When we see a bear in the woods or a tiger in the jungle, what's our first reaction? One of 4 things. Fight, flight, freeze, or faint. We fight back, which is less than 5% of people, by the way. The majority will flight. They'll run away. The next one is faint. They'll lie down and play dead. Hopefully the animal goes away. Or they'll freeze in panic and not know what to do and just stand like a tree trunk. And when it comes to dogs specifically, they actually will tell you, if you ever go for wilderness training, if you ever see a wild dog, stand like a tree trunk, freeze. Choose that of the 4 reactions. That those 4 reactions are caused by what's called the amygdala, which is the first part of the brain to develop, oftentimes referred to as reptilian response. Okay, because all animals have exactly those same 4 responses, whether they're predator or they're prey: fight, flight, faint, or freeze. And human beings are no different. Okay, so it's the amygdalian or reptilian response to a threat. Okay, so we see something, or we hear something, or we start to feel pressure. Right? A lot of people these days have been blaming their panic attacks, adults, on the news. They watch the news, they listen to the news on the radio, and it actually starts causing panic for them. They're so angry with Donald Trump, they get high blood pressure as they're driving their car. Right? Or at the same time, it also might be hearing commercials about death and dying. Like, I'll tell you my own experience. Just on the way here today, I'm listening to 680 News, and there's this new thing called Aspirin 81 or something, or Aspirin 71. Take 2 tablets, carry it with you in case you have a heart attack. I'm thinking, should I start carrying that? Like, I'm not that old, but I start to worry. Maybe I will have a heart attack. Maybe I should carry that too. And that's what happens in these ads. It creates fear. Right? And other commercials that have been on 1010 have been around people buying critical illness insurance against cancer and prostate cancer, and all those kind of crazy things that rarely happen to people, but it could happen, so it gets people having fear. There was a commercial for the cemetery, not the Meadowville, but the one in Pickering. They're having a buy or plot now before it's too late, or some sort of a commercial that was going on CFRB 1010. They had to pull it out because people were complaining that it's causing them to have panic as they're driving. Right? So what we hear, what we see, what we sense, it can cause a reptilian response when we don't know what to do. What happens is this thing called the thalamus, which is located basically in the middle of the brain. It's part of the hippocampus, which is where we keep our emotions and also where we keep our memories. Okay? So both of these are all linked. And what happens is that when we see something or we hear something, we have this sensorial response, our bodies try to make sense of it. It either has a memory stored about maybe someone dying from listening to something that we're listening to or seeing something we're seeing. And this happens quite often with refugees who will hear a bell and have an actual reptilian response, right? It happened at T.L. Kennedy, where there's a large number of refugees who are there right now from Syria, and the fire alarm went off, and it caused a massive panic in the school in September this past year, because these kids had heard bells in a different context, right? And then we had... And then sometimes if you have sometimes you have a memory, but sometimes you also have just an emotional response that's unexplained. So kids who are becoming mukallaf, kids who are going through the adolescent puberty years, their emotions are in a state of flux as different hormones are developing and being released. And so what often happens with teenagers is that there's a whole cut in their serotonin levels, which is the mood regulation. So oftentimes what happens is that when 1 second they're happy, and 1 second they're angry, and 1 second they're sad, and 1 second they're crying, next second they're laughing, and they don't know what's going on. Even that can trigger a panic response. So when I'm dealing with teenagers who are having a panic attack, and I get a call from the teacher in the classroom saying, this kid's freaking out, I'll run in and I'll recognize a panic attack because I've seen them so many times. And what I'll do is I'll start talking to the student and say, you're experiencing a panic attack. Right? And sometimes the most recent one, the girl, her hands became cold, and I touched them, it was cold as ice. Her feet as well. And she almost having almost like a hypothermic reaction, as if someone fell in the lake and having hypothermia. That was new for me, seeing that kind of a reaction in the body. But what I found is that whenever you're working with kids, the first thing you tell them you're having a panic attack, the first response is, "Oh, really? Are you sure?" And that starts to calm them down because you name what the problem is. Then you say to them, what are some of the symptoms you're experiencing? And then you say to them, you're having reptilian response, fight, flight, faint, or freeze. So then you have this conversation with them, and that knowledge starts to help them calm down. And then we say to them, let's focus on your breathing. Now, if you have a kid who's hyperventilating in your home environment, give them a paper bag and let them blow into the paper bag until they start to calm down. Or have them breathe in through their mouth and breathe out through their nose, or the other way around, whatever is more comfortable for them, until their breathing starts to normalize. If they're standing, have them sit. If they're sitting, have them lying down, so that they can achieve equilibrium of blood flow within the body, so that the blood pressure can start to come back to normal, whether it's too low or too high. If it's too low, they're going to faint. If it's too high, they're going to start running around or have more panic. Okay? So these two elements is what I wanted to share with us today, so that we know how we can work with our kids around if this ever happens in our home environment. The next element, which is the third element today, and there's 4 of them in total. The third part is about destigmatizing mental health. So what's happening in our society these days really is that mental health is something that we're talking about more and more because there are more institutions that are available to help, and more people are experiencing poor mental health, mental unwellness, which is why and there's a lot more commercials about it. Bell just had 2 weeks ago, Let's Talk, a campaign to talk about mental health and wellness. We have a lot of celebrities who are coming out and telling people about some of the issues that they have had growing up, and some of the mental health illnesses that they've experienced as well. So people are talking about it a bit more. Within our communities of Muslims, it is something that alhamdulillah is becoming more talked about as well. I mean, the fact that you're here listening to this means it's something important to you. And inshallah, there'll be more and more people talking about this. And I hope that inshallah you share with other people what we're talking about here today, because our community needs this kind of support. And we don't know that this support does exist in our society. And a lot of us are not aware that our kids are going through this on a regular basis. When I was at T.L. Kennedy Secondary School, 65% of those kids are Muslim. And those are the kids I was working with the most around mental health and well-being and mental health illnesses. Right? So we need to be very aware of it. So what does it look like? I'm going to show you a small video that talks about what does mental unwellness look like. So this is going to require some reading. And then I'll take it up as well. So this is post-traumatic stress disorder. So with our refugee population, this is depression. 10% of kids feeling depressed. In Ontario, is 20% of kids. Schizophrenia, which was the next step after that first clip we saw. Bulimia, which is eating food and then throwing it back up again to stay skinny. Personality disorder, or bipolarism, or what they used to call manic depressive. Anorexia is just not eating at all to stay as skinny as possible. Self-harm is cutting without the intent of suicide. OCD is obsessive compulsive disorder, where a person repeats the same action over and over and over again. Body dysmorphic disorder, where a person does not like their body. And binge eating, where a person doesn't eat for a long time, they're anorexic, they eat like crazy and they become sick as a result. Pyromania is playing with fire or fireworks. So the idea behind this is just it's kids in a school here in Ontario put this together as part of a project for the community to start talking about issues around mental health. Okay, so those are some of the manifestations that a person can experience when they have poor mental unwellness. The only one not mentioned here is addictions. Addictions, and there are very different types of addictions. We think of the first thing we could think about addiction is smoking usually, but with our kids, what's the greatest area of addiction? The device? Go a little bit further than that. What do you do on the device? Social media, other than that? Video games. Video games is the number one addiction amongst teenagers. In fact, amongst kids aged 8 to 15, that's the number one area of addiction is video games. There are counselors who are coming out now. You can actually graduate with a psychology degree specific to addiction in video games. Right? That's how prevalent it is. There are kids dying because they won't move from the same place. They play the video game for 2 or 3 days in a row. They start developing kidney problems, and they end up dying on the spot. It's happening. I remember when I was in my early years of teaching, you'd hear about once in a while some kid was sitting in some sort of a online environment cafe or something for 3 days straight and then died. And it was like once in a blue moon, and we'd hear about it. Now it's regular. It's actually becoming normal that kids are dying from sitting in front of the TV for so longer and playing video games for hours and hours and hours without taking a washroom break. So there's not enough blood flow in the body. So this is something we need to start talking about. Okay, 1 in 5 Canadians, 20% of Canadians will experience mental health illness sometime in their lifetime. This is a 2015 statistic. 10 to 20% of youth experience mental health problems or illness. 5% of males and 12% of females experience depression, which means that we have more girls experiencing depression than boys. It's all from 2015. All these stats here. And by age 40, 50% of Canadians will have experienced mental illness. That means us too. We're Canadian. Just because we're brown, we're still Canadian. Okay, we represent part of the diaspora of Canada as well. So I'm sharing this with us so that we can utilize this information to teach our kids and let them know that they're not alone if they're experiencing some sort of mental unwellness. And that's what kids want to feel. They want to know that they're not alone in feeling different or feeling abnormal. They want to know that that this happens on a regular basis. When I'm following up with kids after they had a panic attack, I'll often tell them this: just so you know, you're the 5th one this week. You're not alone. Or you're the 15th one this month. You're not alone. And just hearing that makes them feel reassured that other kids are experiencing the same thing too. Nothing's wrong with them. They're not like going crazy. Right? They're not going insane. They're not going to put them into a hospital for the rest of their life. They want to know that they are normal, that mental unwellness is normal. It affects 20% of young kids. Half of Canadians are going to experience it sometime in their life. That's significant for people to be aware of. Okay, that's one side of it. The other side of it is knowing ourselves, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself tells us. This is Surah Balad, verse number 4. لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي كَبَدٍ. That we have created human beings in a state of turmoil. Right? In a state of constantly questioning, am I right or am I wrong? Constantly questioning their ethics, always guessing. Right? Kabad can also mean bearing pain. Right? So we have been created in this state. Okay? وَخُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ ضَعِيفًا. That we have created mankind in a state of weakness, as da'if. We were not created in a state of strength, we were created in a state of weakness. And the third, إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ خُلِقَ حَلُوعًا. That we have been created in a state of burning anxiety. That's how that word is translated. Halu'a. That we have with burning anxiety. Not just regular stress, burning anxiety. Okay? This is very important for us to be able to share with our kids, these ayahs, so that we don't feel alone. And we know that we have been created this way, that we are going to experience some form of mental unwellness sometime in our life, whether we're young or whether we're old. Maybe at both ends of the spectrum, maybe when we're young and when we're old. Right? Sometimes these issues are cyclical if we don't get the right help at the right time. One of my teacher colleagues, he has been experiencing this since he was age 15. And last year, at age 38, he took off 3 months because it reoccurred. Right? Yep.
How to overcome this type of problems? My son is addicted to video games, and I'm facing a lot of stress from him. Even he is facing the same stress and anxiety because of it.
Okay. So I'm going to come to that in a second. The last part 4, is the solutions. So give me 1 second, I'll answer your question. Okay, so these ayahs are here for us to understand that as a community, we cannot shy away from talking about mental unwellness. Mental health and well-being is part of our deen. We have been told by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala how we have been created, and we need to be able to talk about it openly without any shame or discomfort. Okay, so that's understanding mental health. Now what can we start doing? How can we start developing hope? Okay, because again, we're talking about mental health, and mental illnesses, and mental unwellness. So we said a few moments ago that hope is a key ingredient that we need to instill within our kids. So this is in Surah Baqarah, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها, that we have not burdened a soul beyond what it can bear. Okay? So we can share with our kids, yes, we have been created in a state of weakness and turmoil and anxiety. Yet, given that, Allah has told us that no matter what He tests us with, in terms of mental unwellness, it is not more than we can bear. Now when I talk to kids about this, Muslim kids about this, I explain to them in this way. You might look at my life and think, man, Mr. Zia has an amazing life. You know, we never see him unhappy. He's never having anxiety or stress. He seems to always be chill. He's good. I wish I could be like that. I shared this with kids because I used to think the same thing when I was a kid too. I would look at celebrities, I look at teachers, I look at my parents, I look at other uncles, other neighbors, and I say, it's amazing how great they have their life. Sometimes when my parents were abusing me, I would look at my friend Timothy McDonald across the street and say, you know, he has such an amazing life. His parents are so great. And then one day his parents got divorced. And then we found out that there was a lot of beating going on in the home that we didn't know about, including for my friend. Right? So when we think about the problems that we have, when we think someone else has an easy life, I tell kids, if you stood in my shoes for a second, you would crumble under the pressure that I bear. You would not be able to handle it. And then I say to the kids, if I were to stand in your shoes for a second, I would not be able to handle it. I would crumble like wool. And they don't understand. I say, because my problems that Allah has created were meant for me, I can handle them. No one else can. They're tailor custom made for me. And your problems were custom made for you. No matter what age you're at. Kids need to know that. Right? So when we're working with our children, we take this ayah, we explain it to them in this fashion. So they understand that they do have the ability to overcome whatever pressures exist, because whatever pressures are on them are designed for them, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created them, created each of us individually. He knows what we can handle, what we cannot handle. He gives us problems that we can deal with, that we can find a solution for. The next ayahs are in Surah Sharh, which is a repeated ayah. فَإِنَّ and then inna again. Inna, of course, meaning that without any doubt. There's no shak, we have full yaqeen. And what He's telling us here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that after hardship, there is ease. There's always going to be a period of hardship. And following that hardship, there's going to be a period of ease. The language I use with kids, there's light at the end of the tunnel. You're going through a dark part of the tunnel right now, but there's light at the end of the tunnel. And inshallah, you will get there. Just keep persevering, right? With kids who are in grade 11, grade 12, I'll tell them that life is like a sine curve, because by then they've done trigonometry, right? Life is like a sine curve. It goes up and down, up and down, up and down. You're going to have hard times and good times, hard times and good times. And that's how life continues to move on. The next ayah is in Surah Talaq, verses 2 and 3. Where Allah tells us quite clearly that He will make for us an exit out of every difficulty that we're facing. That whatever hardship we have entered, He will create for us its exit point. So He'll put us into this tunnel of problems, of darkness that we're facing, but He'll also give us the light at the end of that tunnel. And then how is He going to do that? In ways that we could never imagine. Through people we can never imagine. In a time that we can never imagine. Right? So He will help us through methods and means by which we can never imagine ourselves. That maybe our worst enemy becomes our best friend. Right? That teacher we don't like all of a sudden becomes the best teacher we ever had. That problem I'm having with my mother or father, somehow they forget it magically. Right? Somehow I'm in debt, and then tomorrow I get inheritance for more than that covers my debt. Right? So we have to, this is part of, again, keeping hope alive. And the last one, Surah Hadid, and this is very important especially for teenagers, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us quite clearly that He is with us wherever we are. Right? Wherever we are, He is with us. And this is something very important for kids to keep in mind. Right? And I share with them a story from Ahl Kitab. It's called the story of the footsteps, and I'll just share it with you quickly here. Where a man has died and he goes up to Jannah, to heaven. He's having a conference with Allah, and Allah shows the man his footsteps from birth until death. And He shows him two sets of footsteps. And He says to him, see, I was always with you. From the time you were born to the time you died, I was always with you, taking care of your needs every single time. And the man is looking at the path. When he stops, he says, but look, the hardest time of my life, there was only one set of footsteps. Where did you leave me? Why did you leave me at that time? He says, actually, Ya Abd, my slave, that is the time that I picked you up and carried you through. Right? That's the time I picked you up and carried you through. So this concept that Allah is always with us is something that we need to inculcate within our kids, so they know that no matter what hard times they're going through, after hardship there is ease. The problems that are being customized for them, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Allah will create the light for them at the end of that tunnel and let them get there by means they would never imagine. And at the end, Allah is always with them. No matter what happens in this life, Allah is always with us. We never lose hope. And hope, again, being the main ingredient that we have to inculcate within our families and our kids' belief systems, so that they can have hope when going through times of mental unwellness. Inshallah, until they get to that time of healing and mental health. So, what are we supposed to do? How do we create hope? What are we supposed to do on a day-by-day basis? And I do mean day by day. Let's not be reactive and wait for our kids to have a mental breakdown or have a panic attack or have, schizophrenia or bulimia or anorexia. Let's not wait for that time to happen. Let's be proactive by doing something every single day as much as we possibly can. Okay? And it's a state of being. So if we're not doing this already, I encourage us to do this as much as we can. Based on our own, we're human beings, we have limitations, right? We have different professions, we have different times we're home, different times we're not home. To the best of our ability, I encourage all of us here, I remind myself first, let's try and be all of these. And the first is being available. Simply being available for our kids is very important. Even if it's just one day a week. Even if it's just one day a week. Being available to exercise with them. Being available to read a book with them, depending on how old or young they are. And by the way, teenagers like being read to more than young kids, just in case you're wondering. All right? Be with them when they're doing their homework, or when they're having assignments that maybe they're trying to avoid. Be with them when they want to have something to eat. Be available to them when they need us. And as kids get older, they're going to ask for us less and less. When the kids are younger, they're going to say, can you help me with this, can you help me with that? As they get older, they don't ask anymore. Which means that we have to ask them. Or we say to them, I'm available for you now. I'm here. What can we do together? And it is a sacrifice. One of the biggest sacrifices we make as parents is time. Right? Time for our kids. We come home after a hard day's work, or we've got other things in our minds, we've got other things we have to do, but we put those aside and we give our time to our kids. Even if that means that we go sleep at 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, our kids have to come first. This is something I believe. I believe it as a teacher, I believe it as a guidance counselor, I believe it as a parent. The second is to be present. It's one thing to be available, but if I'm sitting with my kids and I'm on my phone the entire time with them, I'm not present. I'm not present in the moment. I'm not being engaged with them. Right? So it's very important for us to put our devices away. When we're listening to them, when they're sharing their experiences, let's not interject. Let's not judge them and say, that's a really silly idea. Where'd you come up with that? Oh, I don't like that friend of yours. He's this and he's that. Right? Let's not be judgmental. Let's be physically present, but let's also be cognitively present with them as well. Now, when we're being available and we're being present, we have to have patience. The way we need to see our kids as if they are our friends. I mentioned that a little while ago. But even kids who are younger, if we're going to show them respect, we have to treat them like our friends. You see, as a teacher, I am forbidden by law to put my hands on a kid. Did you know that? If as a teacher I put my hands on a kid in a school or in the community, I would be arrested. I would lose my teacher's license. Even happened in the library somewhere. I got upset with a kid. I pushed the kid down. Even though I was breaking up a fight and I was violent against a kid, I would lose my teaching license. Okay, the Ontario College of Teachers is very strict about this. So, if I'm not allowed to do that at school, in my job, how could I dare do it in my home environment? And the same thing goes for all of us here. Remember I said a little while ago, parent as first educator. The parent is always the first teacher in the home. So if the teacher at school cannot put their hands on a kid, the teacher at home cannot put their hands on a kid either. So physical corporal punishment is not the best way. If as a teacher I demean or insult a student, do you know what happens to me? I go before a tribunal, Ontario College of Teachers, and I'm forced to sit there before a panel of peers, and they'll either give me a reprimand on my record, they'll force me to go complete a course on better classroom management or how to work with kids, and they may or may not publish my name publicly in the public record for people to see what I have done. That's insulting a kid or making them feel bad or abusing them emotionally or verbally in a classroom. If I swear at a kid, same thing happens. So if the teacher at school cannot talk down to a kid, cannot insult them, cannot demean them, cannot call them names, then the teacher at home cannot do the same either. If we're parents as first educator, if we're parents and we're teachers at home, the same rules that happen in the classroom for a teacher have to be applied in our home environment as well. Which means that we need to be patient with our kids, no matter what age they are at. And like I said, the best way to mentally think about it is to look at our kids as friends. Some of our friends need more coaching than others. Some of our friends, even some of our adult friends are a bit wayward. They need to be reminded to go and pray. They need to be reminded, don't talk like that. It's not becoming of a Muslim to talk in this manner. The same thing with our kids. We treat our kids like we treat our friends, with patience. First and foremost. And Surah Asr is something that we can recite in the home so we can teach our kids. Now, when we're doing this, we have to be explicit. Right? Kid messes up in the home, and we say to them, begin the conversation with this. Wal asr, innal insana la fi khusr. If we've done this enough times, like we in my home, my kids finish it off for me before I'll just say wal asr, and then they'll finish it off and say, okay, I understand what I did was wrong. And then we'll have a conversation. But the reason I begin conversations with wal asr is to remind of the last, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ, that we have to have patience. So even when my two kids get into fights with each other, when having sibling rivalries going on, I'll begin the conversation with asr. We have to be patient with each other. If they're making me upset, I'll just start reciting Surah Al-Asr, and they'll know that they're getting on my nerves. Right? But I'm showing them I'm trying to be patient with them. So I'm teaching them explicitly, patience has to be part of our character, so that we can live in a home of peace and tranquility, not a home of dhulm and hitting and screaming and yelling and fighting. Right? Because in homes of yelling, screaming and hitting and fighting, what develops? Anxiety and stress, where kids don't want to go home. You know, when I leave school at 3:30, school finishes at 2:30, and 3:30 I'm leaving for home. The kids who are still in the basketball court playing, the kids who are still hanging around the hallways, the kids who are still in the field, I know why they don't want to go home. I know exactly why they want to go home. Because at home, screaming, yelling, fighting, kicking, yelling. Anxiety and stress exists at home. There are kids who are waiting for the summer to be over, waiting for the winter break to be over, so they come to a safe space, which is school. Why do kids love coming? If you have a kid who loves going to school and doesn't want to be at home, we have a problem with our home. So, being patient with them, inshallah. The next is being calm. Okay? We have to be calm for them, so that they can be calm by themselves. If something goes wrong in the home, let's say, for example, the plate falls down and breaks into a million pieces. There's two reactions as a parent we're going to have. We're going to yell and scream at them, right, and start freaking out, or we can be calm and make it a teachable moment. I'll give you an example of what teachable moment means. A long time ago when I was teachers college, we went around visiting different schools. I went to a kindergarten classroom. And in the kindergarten classroom, as the kindergarten teacher is explaining to us about the classroom and how to be a teacher and so on, one of the kids in the class is painting. His red paint jar falls on the ground, it's glass jar, and breaks. So a lot of us are like, okay, what's she going to do now? Like, what do you do in this situation? Kid just broke a jar with paint everywhere, what's going to happen? Is she going to yell and scream? Is she going to punish the kid? Is she going to give a detention? Are you going to call the parent? What's going to happen? It was amazing because it's routine in the classroom. It was a teachable moment. She calls all the kids over. So, okay, let's say, Abdullah, he dropped the paint. What do we do, kids? There was no yelling, no screaming, calm. Abdullah says, I'm going to call the janitor. She says, go ahead, call the janitor. Another kid says, I'm going to get the broom and the sweep. The other kid says, I'm going to make sure we get the vacuum so no one's around the carpet. And one kid gets these little pile-on things, put them around. It was a teachable moment because things can be replaced. Right? Things can be replaced. I'll never forget myself, and it reminded me of that situation when I was there, that when I was young, when I would break something, my parents would freak out, and I would start freaking out too. I would start running around because I didn't know what to do. I'd run to my room and hide under the bed. And then one day, for some odd reason, I broke a glass, and I must have maybe 10 or 11 years old. My parents didn't do anything. They came in, they swept it up, they said, don't worry, call us, just a glass. You can go play again. It stuck in my head, like 30 years later, right? Because it was the one time that everything was calm, and no one freaked out. So we teach calmness instead of anxiety if we remain calm in situations of stress. Right? If we're in a car accident, if we get pulled over by the police for speeding, right? If something breaks in the home, if a TV breaks or someone's getting frustrated, if we can remain calm, right? Instead of throwing furniture or yelling or breaking the TV ourselves, it makes a very big difference in the lives of kids, because if they are experiencing calmness in the light of stressful situations, then in their life when anxiety and stress starts to happen, they also enact calmness as well, because that is what they have learned. Right? Learned. It's learned behavior over a period of time, that's done consistently over a period of time. And even if we start adding words to it, right? So for patients, we say wal asr. So when they get older and then they get into a fight with somebody, they might say wal asr, right? So when my mother was freaking out at my brother, who's much younger, my daughter says to my mother, wal asr. That's all she said. And my mother was very confused, but it spawned a really good conversation in my home, with my mother's home. And the same thing with calmness. So with calmness, if something breaks or something, what do we say? We say, it's okay. It's just a dish. It doesn't mean anything. It's irrelevant. Allah inshallah will grant us something more because He is Al-Razik. Right? Or we might say something, it's okay that we got a speeding ticket. Alhamdulillah, we didn't get into a car accident. We didn't run a red light and someone hit us. Allah saved us from something. Right? So we remain calm in these situations so that our kids can learn calmness as well in the face of stress. So a few more to go. Empathetic. This is different than sympathy. Never say to a kid, I know what you're going through. Because kids won't believe it and they'll think that we're lying. And they might even label us as a liar. And in the future, they might not come back to us. So even as a parent, never say to a child, I know what you're going through. Because we don't. We're not children. We're well past that age. So we don't actually understand what life is like in 2018 with smartphones and social media and the stress of bullying 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We have no idea what it's like to be a teenager these days, or even a small kid for that matter. Right? We grew up in a very different environment, a very different time. So empathy is better than sympathy. Empathy is lending an ear and taking the time to try to understand. And here's the words that we use. Help me understand what you're going through. How can I be of service to you? How can I understand the situation better? Help me by teaching me what's going on. This is how we approach kids. Not telling them we know what's going on. We know what they're going through. I was bullied too when I was a kid. No, Dad, you weren't bullied this way when you were a kid. You didn't have 50 kids on Snapchat, chasing after you online. Maybe you have 50 kids chasing you in the park when you were young, but this is different, right? So empathy is about understanding, and that's the key word. Help me to understand. How can I better understand? How can I better support you? These are the question stems that we use. So the H's. Help me to understand. How can I understand? Not, why is this happening? Why didn't you do this? That's causing more stress and anxiety. Right? The next is to validate their feelings. Okay? To validate their feelings. To make them feel like, you know what? I understand that you're stressed out. I understand I understand that you're going through a period of stress. I understand that you are having some anxiety. It's okay to be anxious. It's okay to have stress. Right? If they're being bullied, right? We can say to them, I understand what bullying must do to you. I understand it must make you feel really stressed or not want to come to school anymore, not want to go to class anymore. Right? There are parents dealing with kids at home who are school phobic, kids who don't want to go to school for fear. We need to validate their feelings and make them feel like what they're going through is legitimate, that it's real, and that we believe it's real. So when we go back to those same three ayahs about destigmatizing mental health and unwellness, we're validating them in what they might be feeling. And the last one is this, dope. So if you want to have hope, you have to be dope as well. Dope means determined to, this is on your worksheet by the way, determined to overcome the pressures of existence. Determined to overcome the pressures of existence. In my behavioral support class where kids come when they're having a stress attack or a panic attack, we have a big poster there with this acronym on it. Determined to overcome the pressures of existence. Being dope. And what this really means is that we have to show our kids that we are also experiencing pressures and stresses and anxiety. When kids can see that their parents are going through similar struggles as themselves, they can relate better. So when parents are having a hard time sharing or getting their kids to talk, especially teenagers, they never seem to talk, open the dialogue by sharing some of the pressures that we are experiencing. Even if it's something like, on the day of judgment, I have to stand and answer for my children. I'll be asked by Allah, did you take care of your children? Did you feed them their vitamins before they went to bed? Did you make sure they brushed their teeth before they went to bed? Did you clothe them? Did you give them the best foods to eat, or just gave them chocolate and chips every day? It can be something as simple as that. Share with them some of the pressures. Right? On the day of judgment, I'm going to be asked, did your teenage son or daughter pray with you? Did you teach them Quran? Did you teach them manners and morals? So, son or daughter, how am I going to answer on the day of judgment if you don't help me help you? We all want to get to Jannah together, right? Do you want to see me in Jahannam? Inshallah, you don't want to see me in Jahannam, right? We want to be in Jannah together. We want to live together in Jannah. So help me help you get to Jannah. You help me get to Jannah. This is called determined to overcome the pressures of existence. We share with them the pressures that we face as adults. What's happening at work, what's happening in our relationships. Not and not to the detriment. We don't want to tell them problems between spouses. That's going to freak them out. They're going to get worried that their parents are having a divorce or something. No. But we share with them maybe an issue with a friend. Or maybe we share with them something happened in the past. Right? Share with them something happened in the past. I wanted to go out with my friends to a restaurant after school one day, but I had no money. Loch Lee, this is in grade 8 for me. Loch Lee said, don't worry, I have a $100 bill. I got it for my birthday. I'll take you to the store and I'll buy you food. I thought, let's go. A week later, Lockley comes to me and says, remember last week I took you to the restaurant, I bought you that food for $20? I'm like, yeah. He says, now you owe me. Now you owe me. I had no money. I'm like, okay. Now I have to go home to my father and tell him what happened. Then my father gives me, $30. And then I take Lockley with me. Okay, after $15, we'll both have to eat. No. He spent $30. Right? That's some of the pressure that exists when I was a kid. Money. I learned a very important and very valuable lesson that day. Right? Always pay your own way. Don't take from other people. Right? But I shared that with my kids, and then I asked them, now, if you're in the same situation, what would you do? How would you deal with that pressure? Right? What kind of pressures would you be going through if that was happening today in school with you? How would you approach me if you had to have that conversation? Right? So we share with them the pressures that existed when we were young, when we're living right now. Maybe some of the pressures we might be thinking about in the future as well. And we share with them and we invite them to help us be part of the solution. We are teaching them how to be determined to overcome the pressures of existence, to be determined to have hope in the face of adversity, to be determined to be calm when the world is losing its mind, to be determined to be patient with each other, and most importantly, patient with ourselves. Where do we get help from? Okay, so Nasiha Muslim Youth Helpline. This is local for us, Monday to Friday, 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock. They get calls, majority from parents. I have done some volunteer work with them. Okay, the majority of calls from youth are people aged 20 and over. People in college and university, that's where the number one calls come from. And then almost 26% of their calls, almost just over a quarter of the calls, are from parents. So as a parent, I'm inviting you that if you have issues with your kids and you don't know where to get the help from, give them a call. If you want to know how to have a conversation with your kids about a specific issue, some anxiety or stress that they're facing, or if as a parent you're facing stress and anxiety because you can't reach your kid, give them a call. They have actual trained psychologists and social workers who are giving up, they're doing pro bono work, they're volunteering their time 1 day a week to help out with Nasiha Muslim Youth Helpline. And they have 27 counselors working 5 days a week. The second is Kids Help Phone. It's not Islamic, okay, but they get a number of calls from Muslims, and there are a lot of Muslim psychologists working with them. They have been trained on how to deal with faith-based issues. Okay? So faith-based issues, whether it's Judaism or Hinduism, Sikhism or Islam, their counselors are trained on faith-based issues, and you can call them as well. This is 24 hours, 7 days a week. So if you can't go through Nasiha, you can call Kids Help Phone, and then you can call Nasiha later on if you need to as well. Okay? Nasiha does not call back. Kids Help Phone also has an online, so you can go to the website .ca, you can do an online chat as well. Nasiha is working on that right now. InYourHead.ca. So this was put together by teachers, guidance counselors in Peel region. Okay, so public board and Catholic board, we got together. All the guidance counselors, including myself, all of our psychologists, all of our social workers, we got together and created this. So when you go here, you'll see a side for parents and a side for kids. Okay, so when you go to InYourHead.ca, if you're a kid, you click on this side. If you're a parent, you click on this side. Okay, and then it'll give you tips as a parent, what to do and how to help your kids. And it's split up by different areas of anxiety and stress and other factors that might be going on. So all the issues we talk about, depression, anorexia, bulimia, body image issues, general stress and anxiety or general anxiety disorder, GAD it's called. You'll find all of it here on InYourHead.ca. The last is Big White Wall, which is an American resource, so it's accessed worldwide. Then on here, it's mediated peer-to-peer counseling. So on this, you will not find necessarily people who are trained psychologists and social workers, but people who have been trained what they call peer-to-peer counseling. Okay? What does that mean? It means that, I'll give you an example of my school. The Red Cross has come in and we have gotten 11 kids trained on what's called Respect Ed. So they've been trained that, to intervene in the school when a fight is about to happen. Or if they see someone's feeling stressed and anxiety or they're skipping class, they've been trained how to intervene and give them some peer-to-peer counseling so that they can get back to normal or at least get them into a counselor to get the help that they need. So Big White Wall is all online. There's no phone number. So you go on, here's a blog site, you type in your question, and then you'll get a response. It is moderated all day long. Okay, so it's created worldwide. So they have counselors from all around the world who are going on this site and monitoring the conversation. Okay, I would suggest you that as parents you try these out first before you share them with your family. Call Nasiha before you have your kids call Nasiha as well, so that you know what kind of counseling is available and what kind of stuff that they're offering there. Okay. You also have my email address, I think. Do I have? Yes, on the worksheet. My email address is there as well. It is 9 o'clock, so I'm just past my time. I was supposed to finish 7 minutes ago. If you have questions, specific questions that you have with your facing with your children, and you like just a little bit of help, I can send me an email. I can give you a call, and we can talk over the phone, and we can share some more information, or I can give you some tips on how you can start the conversation, or where you can get the actual help from. Keep in mind, I'm not a psychologist or a social worker. I'm a high school guidance counselor. It's a very different perspective. I had the academic side and the social work side. But I'm not going to sit there and counsel kids long term. That's what social workers and psychologists are for. So if you have a child that you feel needs help, I can help you figure out how to get them help and where to get help from. From Muslim resources and non-Muslim resources, whatever you feel comfortable with. Okay? There are a number of Muslim health professionals right across the GTA who do give their time. Some charge, some don't charge. And we have a number of Muslim counselors working out of CAMH, which is a center for addiction and mental health. And there's a location in Mississauga at Highway 10 in Eglinton. There's a location in Oakville as well. And then there are, I think, 7 different locations in Toronto, City of Toronto itself. Okay, so there are resources that exist to help families.
Take some of these people, what effect will it have on their academic records? Like maybe in the university areas, like if my child is behaving like child behavior problem, and if I take some of these people and he becomes good after that. So anything will be on the records?
No. Good question. So it's a very good question. Jazakallah khair. I've had this happen to me once where a parent did not want to get help for their child. The child was, in my estimation, the child was doing self-harm, and I was concerned that they would go the extra step. And the parent was refusing to get their child help because they were worried that they might not get into university, somehow it'll be on their permanent record. So the answer is no. Thank you for asking that question. So what do university, now I'm a guidance counselor, I work with universities and colleges all the time. What information do we give them? We give them what's on their student profile sheet. Name and number of their parents, their address, and their own name and number. And that's it. That's the main profile that we give them. And they use that to confirm what the student is providing on the online application. The second thing we give them is a transcript. That's it. And on the transcript, it says just their courses they took and their marks. Not even attendance is given to them. We don't tell them they have skipping problems, if they were absent for like 3 months or whatever, or they went on vacation somewhere. Universities don't know any of that at all. Okay? All of that is confidential information. When kids come to us and we're helping them with mental health illnesses or whatever issues that we're helping them with, that goes into our private notes. The only people in the world who have access to that is the person who put the notes in, the administrator of the building itself. So the principal leaves the building, new principal comes in, the old principal does not have access to those notes, and a judge. Right? So if something has gone to court, and that only happens very rarely if they ask for notes from the school, where there is usually happens with drug dealing and people are getting severely hurt or they're dead, then that happens. That's very rare. It's only happened to me once where a child was involved in an altercation, and he had graduated about 3 years, and they had come back to us to say whatever notes we had on him in the system, because the other person had passed away during that altercation. Right? So it's very rare that ever happens. So universities do not see any of that. But when kids are applying to university, there's the first application that goes out. About 3 weeks later, they're given a supplementary application form. That is basically, tell us about you. What sports have you done? Where have you volunteered? Have you had a part-time job? Do you help your mom and dad around the house? Do you babysit in the community? Are you part of your faith group or something? What are you doing outside of school? And then they ask you, are there any mitigating circumstances that we should be aware of? Meaning that your average is 78. But when you were in grade 10, you had a depressive episode and you missed 3 months of school. If that did not happen to you, maybe your average would be 86. And you can tell this to the university. It's confidential still, but that helps students get into university. Right? And it happens regularly. I'm telling you this because it happens on a regular basis. All of the students I ever work with around university and college applications, I tell them immediately, look, we know this about you, tell the university this because you'll get in. So I'll give you a good example. Muslim boy, 67% average. Think about it. Grade 12, 67% average. He got into engineering at Ryerson. You know what the cutoff was? 83%. How did he get in? Mitigating circumstances. He was here alone without any parents. He went through a depressive episode in the first 6 months he was here. He went what we call a silent stage for people who are immigrants to a new country. And that's how he got in. Right? Because, mashallah, he was actually a very smart student. I'll tell you how smart he was. Because he was learning the language, so a student who comes from a different country usually takes 5 years to learn the language. He learned it in 2 years by translating from Arabic into English all of his books. He then, because he did that, when his friend joined in a couple of years later, he gave him all the translated notes. So his friend would be able to get through the curriculum very quickly. He finished in 2 years. MashaAllah, right? It's amazing. So it can help, it actually be helpful sometimes in those situations. But in general speaking, no. It's all confidential. Yeah, 100%. And everything you tell these people is all confidential too, by the way. So when you call them, if you either Big White Wall online, Kids Helpful and Nasiha, they don't ask you for your name. If you offer it, great. But they don't ask you where they might ask you what city you're calling from because they keep demographics, but you can even say, I don't want to tell you. Right? So for Nasiha, I remember they gave me stats. This is from last year when the Donald Trump election was going on. So 2016 stats. 78% of the calls were coming from the US. A handful of calls maybe from Canada, but remember 11% undisclosed. Some people don't want, you don't have to tell them anything. You're just there to get advice. So no name, no phone number, not where you live, not your parents' name, nothing. It's completely anonymous. Which is very important for our kids to know and for ourselves to know as well. Yes?
I've heard that some of these mental illness could be hereditary.
Could be, sorry?
Could be in your family.
Yes.
Is it true?
Yes.
And also, why is it happening more now than ever before?
Thank you. Good questions. So the first question is it hereditary? It is. So anxiety and stress is actually something which is inherited. And that's very recent information, by the way. It's not something that people know regularly. In 2014, that's when a major paper came out. It was publicated through the World Health Organization. So it was presented actually at the UN, I think is where it came up from. But we all got a copy of it as guidance counselors. We attended a PD on this concept that it's hereditary because sometimes as counselors, we actually are working with parents just as much as we're working with kids. So when I'm working with kids who have high anxiety and I meet the parents, I immediately know why, because I see it in their parents as well, right? Can be very, very severe. In fact, sometimes parents are on medication for anxiety, and without taking their kid to a doctor, they silently start giving medicine to their kids as well, which can actually cause more problems. So we had a kid faint in school because that's what happened. She was taking Prozac, which is like some sort of it makes you feel happier or something, and she actually collapsed in class. So it can be very detrimental. But yes, it can definitely run the family. Now, why are we finding this more now than these days more than before? 2 reasons. One is actually because we're more open to talking about it. Right? We're more open to talking about it. There's more diagnoses that are coming out. There are more accommodations in the workplace around it. There are accommodations in the classroom around this because it never used to exist before. So to give you an example of the workplace, most workplaces have something called EAP, Employee Assistance Program. You can ask your human resources departments in all of your institutions, your workplaces, and you'll find that they have something similar to offer you. And as cover, you have benefits. You have psychological benefits, coverage for psychological assessments and psychological help through your benefits, which didn't exist a few years ago. So one is really about people talking about it more. But I always look at, is there any sort of external force that has caused more of this than before? So I have myself, just as a guidance counselor myself, just done a little more research on this. And what I have found is that in 1995 something big happened. What happened in 1995? Because that was the beginning of all of this. And you're hearing it, I think. The Internet. The Internet came out in 1995, right? And that changed our world. Think about even road rage. When did road rage become a big thing? Mid-late 90s, right? People walking around with bats and everything because people started losing their patience, right? Everything became instantaneous responses. What happens with email and even texting, we'll talk about that in a second, is that there's a surge of dopamine in the bloodstream Dopamine is the same hormone that is released when a person does marijuana. So it's just like you're having a drug, right? That's the response of email, which is why people are sending email, they're waiting for the email to come back. Before internet, you'd write a letter, and you'd wait a week for it to get there. They'd write a letter, and a week for it to come back. It would take 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, especially if you're going overseas. Sometimes it may take a month before you hear back from somebody. That has significantly changed the psychology of human beings around the world. And then in 2008, something big happened. This is the biggest game changer. And for this, we actually have stats showing the difference. 2008. Smartphone. That's when the iPhone came out. The first smartphone actually came out in 2007 by a company called HTC. I think they still make phones. But the actual smartphone came out in 2008. And that revolutionized technology, but it also destroyed our society. Right? No one ever asked before that, is it okay if I give my kid a device? Right? 11 years ago, we didn't talk about that. But for the last 10 years, that's all we talk about. Especially in the last 5 years, about iPads and Galaxy Tabs and whatever have you out there. And kids as young as kindergarten, grade 1, now want a phone. For what reason? Who they're going to call, I don't know. But this has really destroyed our societies. When we would sit down at the kitchen table, we'd either talk to each other or eat silently. Now we're all on our phones. You go to a restaurant, and you'll see people, families sitting around at the table, not talking to each other, but on their phones. I used to go to the Second Cup to do a small session with some people, and I remember this, right before the session would begin, this couple would always walk in on a Friday night, and they would sit there, get their coffee, and not talk to each other, and they'd be on their phones. I thought, subhanAllah, like, what kind of a relationship is it developing? But this is what has happened in our society. So dopamine releases are going to be more and more frequent through texting and Snapchat. That's why social media is so popular, and so because instant gratification. Because of instant gratification, people can't wait for anything. They have no more patience in their mind. Someone didn't text me back. Is something wrong? And then you start developing anxiety. I'll give you a far out example where this is just a couple years ago. These kids have to write a grade 10 literacy test for graduation purposes, right? It happens every year. This kid doesn't show up, so we're calling home. We call home for the kids that don't show up. 2 kids didn't show up. One was sick. We call this kid. Grandmother picks up the phone. She can't come to school today. I'm like, why? She said, I can't tell you. She just can't come to school today. I said, but ma'am, this is a test that's required for graduation. Even if she fails it, I don't care. She can come and just open the package and go back home again if she's sick. But she has to come and do something. Otherwise, she's going to not pass, and it's going to affect her graduation. Then the grandmother tells me she had a new haircut last night, took a picture and put it on Instagram, and no one has liked it since last night. So she's not coming to school. That's how far it can stretch, right? So why it's happening more and more? You'll find there's an actual study done by Stats Canada in 2002 and 2015. In between is the discovery of the smartphone. And in between, you find 40% general average of increase in people going to the doctors and reporting anxiety disorders. That's massive, right? But then it gets specific, it breaks it down specific. So general anxiety disorder, I believe, was 12% increase. Then there's issues of anorexia or body image issues, was a 4% increase. It breaks it down. But you can find the study online as well. Just look up Stats Canada, 2002 mental health survey, 2015 mental health survey, and you can do a cross comparison between the different percentages.
So, and what does religion has to be? Because now more and more people are kind of being away from practicing the religion, perhaps. Does that have anything to do with the acceleration of this?
It does. And let's go back to the very beginning. Thank you. Good question. The question is that people seem to be leaving religion a little bit or staying away from it for a variety of reasons. Islamophobia might be one of them. But does it cause a problem? Like, what's the issue? And this is the issue. I'm going to go back. Okay. So, consistency. And you may have experienced this yourself, but I'm going to share with you what I experienced growing up here in this country. I was born and raised here in Scarborough, and then moved to Mississauga right before I started university. And what happened to me growing up in this society is that I learned to have a dichotomous or trichotomous lifestyle. At school, I was the good kid getting the A's and being nice and respectful to my teachers. On the street, with my friends, I was rambunctious, I was destructive, I used foul language, because that's what everybody was doing. And then when I went home, I was like a good kid to my parents, right? And what I learned was that you have to wear a different mask depending where you are. What I learned when I became, when I accepted that I need to change who I am and I began to practice Islam in my early 20s at university, I found myself, all of a sudden all the anxiety and stress I had about worrying about what people thought about me was gone. My stress and anxiety about worrying where my next paycheck is going to come from, am I going to make it to a job, all that worry and stress was gone. And I found that I was able to live a consistent lifestyle because I chose Islam as the mask that I wore. And the only mask that I wear till today. And it's what I teach kids, what I teach teenagers. What we do here at Deen for Teens is exactly that. Teaching kids and making them aware that we are all wearing different masks. And if we want to stay away from anxiety and stress, we want to develop hope and love and strength inside of ourselves, we have to have a consistent lifestyle. And Islam, or faith in general, is the easiest and best way to do it because faith doesn't change. What happens on TV changes. If I base my life on what's happening on Riverdale, which is a very popular show, or 13 Reasons Why, these are shows on Netflix, right? That kids are really entrenched in. Then today I'm happy because Archie was saved, and tomorrow Veronica is like, oh my God, can't believe Veronica did that. My life is upside down now. Because people actually, and teenagers especially, base their life around TV shows, and adults might be aware of this as well. The water cooler conversations, right? Did you see what happened on Seinfeld last night? Did you watch what happened on Frasier last night? So on and so forth. And people start basing their life, what happened in the game last night? People start basing their life around sports. They'll have a good day if the Leafs win. If the Leafs lose, life sucks. I'm depressed now. Right? People actually do this. They feel this way. Right? So and because everything else in life is always changing and constantly in flux, right? Even with relationships with friends. Because especially if you're a teenager, one day your friend is happy with you, one day your friend is angry with you, one day your friend is crying, one day your friend wants to kill you. It's up and down. There's always states of flux. Relationship with parents, relationship with teachers, we're always in flux. As adults, I can try and be happy every day for my kids, but I can't always be like that. I walk in and some days my kids know, okay, Dad had a hard day at work today. They'll ask me about it, but it's inconsistent. So what I teach and what I propagate to children, my own children and the teenagers that I work with in school and here and everywhere else I go, is to make Islam as the only mask that we wear, because Allah does not change, Salah does not change, Ramadan does not change. Islam is consistent. Right? And when you talk to people who are imams or priests or pundits or whatever they're called, or rabbis, you'll find that they say exactly the same thing. When I attend these interfaith dialogues that we have in the community, it's the same conversation that everybody's having. Right? So when I've done this at a few different interfaith councils. I done interfaith council in Brampton, and I've asked this question of different pastors that come there. So tell me about how you deal with kids. We have these conversations because the number one issue that they're all dealing with, everybody says the same thing. Consistency of identity is the key to building strong mental health and wellness. Right? So if as parents, my suggestion is that we model that. We model what it means to have a consistent identity. That I'm the same person no matter where I am, no matter what I'm doing. Whether I'm at work, whether I'm at home with my kids or at my friend's house, they should see a consistent identity. So we use Islam as that consistent identity. And what is that consistency? It builds around accountability. As an adult, I know I'm accountable on the day of judgment. I'm going to stand there and answer for what I've done. Kids don't really get that concept necessarily, right? But if we constantly remind them of that, then it becomes part of their thinking as well. So it really is about consistency of identity, but constantly regurgitating the same narrative that we have in our homes. Right? Narratives are just stories. We hear stories everywhere we go, on TV, on the radio, from other people's lives. So we start helping kids create their own narrative that they create by themselves. So no one can tell me, well, all Muslims are terrorists, because that's not my narrative. No, my narrative says Islam is a command form of the word salam, which means be at peace. Islam teaches me that Muslim is a person who practices salam and as a result gets to Jannah. That's my narrative. That's my story. So when I go in the community and I look at the news or I read what Donald Trump is saying, it doesn't faze me. It doesn't affect my identity. It doesn't affect my concept of who I am or my self-worth. Jazakallah khairan. Please.
Somebody got to ask you the question earlier.
Yeah, she's asking again. Go ahead.
Nowadays we have a problem with the internet.
With the internet? A problem with that?
It's a problem with our kids.
Yep.
Spending too much time on the smartphones and they expect that parents should not interfere in their lives. So as a parent, have you given any come across a situation where the parents have put a regulation for this and they have overcome?
So the question is that the internet, accessing the internet oftentimes is an issue, and however, come across parents who have come up with an actual solution. I have. But when we're getting involved with kids who are having internet addiction or video game addiction, or they always want to be on the internet and they don't want the parents involved, you can't just turn off the internet expecting it to be okay. You're going to have a rebellion on your hand. They're going to find that cord you're hiding. They're going to find some way to get to the internet. I've had parents who their kids are going on Snapchat and causing problems. They come to school, give me your phone, or you're not getting it back for another month. And then somehow the kid's back on Snapchat the next day. Wow, they got their friend's phone. Right? So kids are very smart. When they want something, they'll go after it. So again, parent as first educator. We have to teach our kids why they should not be on the internet all the time. We have to teach them self-regulation. And that's something kids don't actually have. It's a taught skill. How do I know that? You know this yourselves. When you get your report cards back from your kids, okay, you'll see the math and science marks and all that stuff. In reality, those marks are irrelevant. What's more relevant is the learning skills, initiative, work habits, teamwork, works independently, and self-regulation. So when you look at your report cards, that's the first thing you should be looking at. Are your kids regulating themselves in the school environment? If they're constantly talking to their neighbor in class, they're not learning anything. If they're constantly skipping class or they're constantly not doing their homework, there's no self-regulation going on. If your kid comes home and the first thing you do is put the video game on and forget dinner, forget life, then there's no self-regulation. How do you teach self-regulation? In a school environment, we have structure. 8 o'clock the bell rings, you're in class. 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock, there's class 1. Then you have a 5-minute break, next class begins, then you have lunch. Then next class, then you get to go home. Okay? It's a structured day. You can't just take lunch whenever you want to. Lunch is designed for you. It's a structured day. Okay? And within the classroom, it's always structured. All classrooms across Ontario are taught exactly the same way. It's called a 3-part lesson. Minds on, action, and then conclusion. Okay? Or consolidation, or debrief. All means the same thing. 3-part lesson. Every classroom from kindergarten to grade 12 across Ontario is taught exactly the same way. You have structure in the class as well. So you have structure everywhere you go. Believe it or not, TV is also structured. How long is a show? Half an hour or an hour. It's structured time. Right? But with the internet, there's no structure. You can get halfway through a YouTube clip and not get bored and go on to the next YouTube clip. You can play video games for hours and hours because it never ends. And current TV programs like Netflix have been created to deregulate self-regulation. See, when we were younger and you wanted to watch something like Seinfeld or Fresh Prince of Bel-Air or Star Trek, you got to watch it once a week. Right? Star Trek was on Friday night, or X-Files. X-Files, Friday nights, 9 o'clock. Right? Everybody's rushing home. Okay, I have to get off the phone because I got to watch X-Files. We were programmed, but once a week. Now you go on Netflix, TV binging, they call it. You can watch a whole season in like 24 hours. Just sit at your couch and just episode after episode after episode. No more self-regulation. So what do? We teach kids self-regulation at home. We tell them, you're home, you leave school at 3 o'clock, you're home by 3:30. From 3:30, 4 o'clock, you get to have a snack, you wash up, you can watch a half-hour cartoon, whatever you want to watch on TV or on YouTube. 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock, you're doing homework. And guess what? I'm sitting beside you to make sure you're doing your homework and not going online to do other sorts of weird things. I'm watching you. I'm standing beside you. I'm being available. I'm being present. I'm being patient and calm, but I'm helping you. 5 o'clock to 5:30, break time. You break for a prayer, you break for a snack, you break for whatever, get up, walk around. 5:30 to 6:30, you're doing your homework again. 6:30 to 7 is dinner. 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock is free time. 8 o'clock, upstairs, get ready for bed, read a book, whatever have you. What kids don't know, which I'm going to tell you right now in case you don't know it, all of these devices, specifically this bloody thing called an iPhone, they are designed technologically by their hardware to be addictive. This is called blue light. Blue light is designed to do what? Keep you awake. Where do they learn this from? The slot machines in Las Vegas. The slot machines in Las Vegas use blue light to keep you up all night long. Plus they pump oxygen inside there to keep you going all night long. On these devices, you can actually put in yellow light at a certain time. So that yellow light helps you go to sleep. NASA invented the yellow light, and they put it for astronauts in space because there's no sun or moon there to keep them going to sleep. So they put the yellow light on a certain time to make them sleepy so they can actually go to sleep. The yellow light starts getting melatonin into the bloodstream, which is a hormone that causes sleep. So if we're watching TV or our iPad or our internet here on the computer at 11 o'clock at night, the person will not be able to go to sleep for another hour, hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. That's why kids are up till 2 o'clock in the morning, they can't go to sleep, because they were just watching this before they went to sleep. So 8 o'clock you go up, you read a book. You don't go on the internet. You let your mind rewind, right? Calm down. And then you get to go to sleep. So that might be one way, is that help your kids by around self-regulation by creating a structure after school than before school. And it's not difficult. My kids are homeschooled, right? They're elementary age, they're homeschooled, but we still have the structure after school is finished. The structure in school and the structure after school as well, to help them get into that habit so that they remain structured. That's the, you asked that question, why is it happening more now than before? Part of the same thing. It's like the whole society is trying to unravel self-regulation through the internet and so on that's causing that.
In the education system as well, they are encouraging bring your device.
Yeah, they are.
All your work on the internet.
Yep. This is a hard balance. I actually work in a 21st century school called Jean Augustine Secondary School in Brampton. And we've been around for 2 years, and it's a very different teaching philosophy there. And everything's online. We use Google Classroom. We have no textbooks. Everything is online. It's called the transparent classroom, where parents can go onto the Google site and see every lesson that was taught that day, before and after, so they can start preparing ahead of time. We have something called Sesame. Sesame is the online assessment, so parents can go online anytime and see their marks live of their kids. So they know how the kids are doing every single day in class. Because teachers are writing down not just the test mark, but conversations and observations. So if a teacher is looking at the class and saying, okay, Abdullah's not doing his work, he'll write it into Sesame. Mariam's on top of it today, he'll write the Sesame. And then conversations. Had a conversation with Muhammad today. He's really getting this material. He's on top of it. He's going to go on to the next lesson. We write that down in the Sesame. It's all live. That's why teachers in the classrooms are carrying the devices too and writing this all live down. So it's the same thing. It's trying to find that balance between using a device and living the 21st century, but then having self-regulation at the same time. It's not easy. This is our complaint as teachers. It's great to talk about 21st century education, but how do you become a 21st century teacher when we know all of this stuff around mental health and illnesses and so on? It's an ongoing practice, I would say. What's the pressure for us to do this anyway? Jobs. We're now living in a digital world. There are new jobs being created every single day because of the digital world. My brother graduated from marketing, my younger one. You know what his first job was? Regulating H&M's Snapchat account. No, it's a Twitter account. That was his job. Being on Twitter all day long for H&M because he's a marketing student. Crazy. Right? And that was like what? Well, I think 4 or 5 years ago. So you can imagine what kind of jobs exist now. Right? We're living in a digital world. Most of what jobs are available are digitally designed. So there's that pressure to compete and to train kids now so they can compete for jobs in the future. Right? The same thing's happening. If you want to see a 21st century college or university, go to Sheridan College beside Square One, the Hazel McCallan campus. You can walk and do a tour of the building. Look at those classrooms. Everything is around collaboration. Everything is around teamwork. Everything around project management. Everything is all about being online all the time. So when you walk into their libraries, they've got like these small little U-shaped tables and television screens, and everybody's sitting there with a computer and working together online, because that's the online 21st century environment for education too, at post-secondary. So if we're actually training kids in high school now to be prepared better for post-secondary education, because that's what's expected. I showed my kids what I did when I was in university. I held up transparencies from over a projector, and I brought over a projector in the classroom. They were laughing. They were like, "What is this? This is like ridiculous." They couldn't believe it. They had never seen a transparency. Crazy the world we live in, right? So I've talked for a very long time. I really appreciate your time and your patience being with us today. Hope that you've benefited from this as much as I've benefited from preparing it, and my family will benefit from it as well. وين by saying سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك واشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك اليك جزاكم الله خيرا والسلام عليكم ورحمه الله وبركاته. Once again, you have my email address. You're more than welcome to reach out to me anytime you like, and I'll help you whatever way I can.